Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. Two fools fighting the colonialist patriarchy and capitalism's unfeeling robot army of exploitation and nihilistic emptiness. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this week we're going to talk about freedom.
Freedom.
Because I'm free.
You are.
And what it means and how it's, whether it's real, whether it exists, whether I think the concept of freedom is regularly used to hurt people, particularly in America. And yeah, just it's just personal autonomy and all that kind of thing.
It is a big topic, actually, isn't it? Now I can't think of a single bullet point. When I think of freedom, I think of not being restricted. It's really, it's like, no, don't you tell me what to do.
That sort of railing against authority, like having to do what other people say, having to impress other people, having to kind of like limit your own self in order to fit into someone else's idea of what should be real. I've just like, or just even, the way that we are categorized by society and kind of forced into little boxes and all that kind of thing. But anyway, this is as I had my last day of contracting, hopefully ever. We'll see how that goes yesterday. So I am at the freest I have ever been. And yet I still got up at 6 a.m, did an hour at the gym, and got here to do the podcast record. So shall we get into it?
Yes, let's do it.
How's it going?
I'm not going to say it's going really, but it is. I've had a lovely week. I have had a lovely week. I have been productive. I'm watching you drink out of your Grand Podcast mug. I don't think I brought a Grand Podcast mug with me.
I am scandalised by that, and I'm starting to wonder if you're taking this podcast seriously.
I brought my Grand Podcast sack with me.
Oh, okay. Did you use it? Have you used that for anything?
Yeah, I've used it. It contains all my random sports gear, like rubber bands and stretchy things. And
right. So it's sort of like stinky bag.
No, nothing in there is stinky. It's the equipment, not the clothing.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's what we used it for. And I've had a productive week off the back of our last podcast where we did a How to Be Your Own Boss. A couple of things you said stuck in my head, so I did a good job, I think, of staying focused, keeping delivery in mind. I listened to our podcast cycle. I took out my electric bicycle. I am a definite convert, certainly for that kind of like going to the shops, because it's been very hot. And getting on an electric bicycle and cycling 10 kilometres to the bigger supermarket and the DIY shop is definitely doable, even when it's very hot, because you don't work so hard. So I was very happy to be using my bicycle for exactly what I had pictured it for.
Excellent.
So I went and bought rubble bags.
You brought rubble bags back on your bike?
Yeah. Not full of rubble, they were empty, but I needed rubble bags. Yeah, right, I needed to go and buy rubble bags. And I listened to my podcast not through headphones. I transmitted it to the world because I had my phone on my handlebars. And I thought, I don't want headphones in because it's too mental. No. So so there you go. So I listened to that. And that helped me this week. Stayed focused. Enjoyed.
I'm going to just take some credit for that and say, well, you're welcome.
Please do.
No,
I like that.
I'm happy that you got something out of that because I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, I did I like the maker versus manager mode as well.
Yeah.
That helps because then you can sort of like, if you do have to shift, it gives you that sort of I'm in maker mode now.
Yes, get off me.
Go
Leave me
away.
Alone.
hand up in a full stop signal.
Yes.
No. So yes, I've enjoyed my week and it's been lovely and warm. Yeah. So there you go. Good week. What about you, Michael?
I'm free as of yesterday. And although it's tempting, I'm sure like some people would expect the next thing to do would be let's just have some time off. I can just stay in bed all day. I can just do anything. But what I'm trying to internalize is I am not walking out through an open field on holiday. I've just scaled the walls of the prison and like jumped over, and the sirens are going off and there's shotguns going off. There's dogs coming after me. I've got to run. I've got to like scrabble and scrape and find a disguise. And this is Prison Break season 2 for me now. Like, if I do not evade, I don't want to get captured again by by having to do that, like someone else's stuff. I want to just keep my freedom. So that's the sort of, that's what I'm trying to keep in my mind and like make sure that I don't forget that. But also I think I don't know, like I think I probably need to give myself a little bit of a break as well, but I don't know, we'll see.
I think your framing of it sounds enormously stressful.
I know, but it's like I don't want to relax because then I'm just going to get forced
might
into
eat you.
I want to give myself a little bit more slack than I have in the past, certainly, but I also want to sort of like remember that I am on the run now. So I'm free, but there's a difference between being free to just chill and free that you have to work for, which is where I still am because I was not born into a very rich family. And
yes, quite.
And in other things, like I got my first real Patreon supporter this week, $2 a month on my Michael Forrest YouTube. So that's a nice sign.
Dinner on you.
Dinner on me. Also, have you seen Bitcoin's up? Bitcoin was up, it hit like 10, 11 grand yesterday. It's been down at like 4. It's been languishing. So I'm like, there we go.
Are you rich again?
I'm not rich, but like at least like that Bitcoin I bought like nearly 2 years ago is now not less than it was when I bought it. But this is the thing. You think the first thing you think when it goes up is, I should have bought more. But then it's like, no, it's a gamble. I had to buy as much as I could afford to lose. That's how you have to think about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
High risk investments, high risk gambles. It's my only one. I put like 50 quid in. So it's like, now it's like 75 quid or something. So it's like, okay, cool, fine. It's not going to change my world.
Dinner's on you.
Dinner's on me unless it goes down again. It's obviously it's fluctuating. But I thought that was I knew it was going to be eventually. So I feel mildly vindicated.
I did read something this week that I think is noteworthy in your and my world, for specifically in Grand Podcast Land. Michael's, is your change day date public?
No, but I can make it public.
So I noted. So your change date is the same. Is the same day, the date that my father died. It's the anniversary of my father's death.
Right.
And I was reading that, and then somebody else I know got married on that day. And obviously I didn't say to her, oh, that's the day my dad died. And then my sister's best friend is born on that day. And then I was reading the other day that the Amazonian tribes sued their government. I will find the article, the specifics, on the 26th of April and won. So I was like, yes.
It's a day to
it's going to be fine.
Day to
remember. I think there's another July date where they go back to court where they might lose, they might sort of like, and I was like, no, don't worry. 26th of April, you're fine. It's a significant day.
Yes. Do you know what, actually, like I did get a calendar reminder this morning. Today, I am 15,000 days old.
Wow. Useful.
Why not? Why not celebrate it? All right, let's talk about freedom. This morning we ran afoul of freedom because we've got our own podcast. We can talk about anything we want. What should we talk about? Don't know.
It's true. Freedom is a very dangerous thing.
Freedom
much
is
like
a
choice.
Double-pronged fork, as they say.
Yes. I think one of the quotes from one of when I was a teenager, I was friends with a family who had many children, and they're all, beautiful, creative people. And but they never really got any qualifications. They never really did anything. They never really pushed themselves forward at all, or progressed in those ways that are measured when you're 18, 19.
Yeah.
And one of our mutual friends said, the problem with them is that their parents gave them the freedom to think about whatever they want, but didn't give them anything to think about. And it's kind of like, you've got the freedom to... you still need some inputs into your freedom, I think.
You can't just say anything. That just doesn't get you anywhere. Because you can often feel much. So, because to put this in chronic terms, you look at people in North Korea talking about all of the problems, and they've got no freedom, and there's a threat of death for the slightest random thing. But if you ask them if they're happy, actually, they're probably happier than we are. Because all the things that captivity and I think that the sort of the community thing is there in a way that is not when everyone is sort of an individual and sort of out on their own and free to do whatever they want, supposedly. It's like when we're all in the same boat, there's something human that connects us that is just, I think we kind of lose when we're free. Not that I want to live in North Korea by any stretch of the imagination, but... just the idea that certainly freedom doesn't equal happiness. And that is, I think, the American mistake. And when I hear senators or whatever talking about how important it is that the Americans have the right to choose their insurance provider.
Yeah.
Just provide the best healthcare you can provide using the state. That is a completely false freedom. And it's actually used to just exploit people and hurt people, I think.
Full freedom, in a way, connects very closely to libertarianism. The freedom to do whatever you want without consideration of consequences to yourself, to the world, to the planet. It does remind... I don't know if this tangent works, but what popped into my head was this conversation I was having recently with somebody. I've spoken about the fact that Croatia, there are quite a few very religious, very conservative people.
Yeah.
And I was sitting around the other day, and somebody that I care for dearly was going, well, I read this article the other day, this guy that had done all this research into homosexuality and was all about equality, after 20 years decided it was a disease and that it was an illness and it needed to be cured. And I was like,
cool.
I was like, so we were having, this is a person that's older than me, and I was just taking my time having a gentle conversation. I was thinking, as I walk around, I was thinking, what was wrong with this statement? It's like, well, let's start with the definition of disease, or illness. It's like, well, are they going to die from it? Is it going to harm them? So the reason I connected it to the freedom thing is when people go, well, you're free to, if you want to do drugs, go for it. Or if you want to drink, go for it. It's up to you. You've got the freedom of choice. You're an adult. There is that sort of, it's like smoking is a big deal here. People still smoke here. And actually it irks me. Because it's a horror. It's not because I don't mind if you smoke, but I know that it affects me if you do it near me, and it affects my child. So please, if you want to smoke, go over there and do what, confine your influence to yourself if you're doing something harmful. So it's going back to this, I don't think it's a particularly tenuous link, but this idea that something is a disease. It's is it hurting you? Is it hurting anybody else? Are you going to die from it? No, it's not. So therefore it's not So there needs to be some definitions around freedom, I think, that sort of go, like we've talked about before, in that sort of freedom within societal boundaries.
Yeah, and sometimes there are people with a questionable agenda that want to limit people's freedoms. So, for example, state-forced pregnancy, which is basically what this anti-abortion stuff is.
Yeah.
We want the state to force women to stay pregnant. it's strange that you can talk about freedom and then sort of have that belief, have that sort of goal.
Oh, I was listening to a podcast about that the other day, about this, the America has this heartbeat clause, and it's like based around the fact that when you're at 6 or 7 weeks, medicine can detect what is called a heartbeat. So if you're going through fertility treatment, you can be overjoyed at 6 or 7 weeks to be told that there is a heartbeat. But it's not really a heartbeat because it's not a heart and it doesn't pump blood and there is no circulatory system. And it's more like, and it's not something you hear, it's something you see because it's a flutter of cells. So it's like a gross misinterpretation of medicine, of science really, and putting it, attaching that to abortion laws, because this kind of and I listened to, I think it was a Guardian podcast that had followed this through in America because of all these like massive anti-choice changes that are floating around. It's like it is a massive. I don't really understand what drives it though, because so many of the people at the forefront of it are women. Because it's sort of you're looking for ways to control people. You're looking for ways to limit people's freedom, to the end of, because you think that if you do that, you'll be better off. Is that it, or is it just purely this sort of moral confusion? Or I think it's just you think that women aren't people, and you just think that they're there. If you just think they're there to kind of carry your children and as receptacles for you, then why would you want them potentially not carrying your children? I don't know. Is it just? But then you say there are women standing up for this, so I don't know. It's very easy to get that Stockholm syndrome and get brainwashed into. One of the women I heard interview. I've definitely talked about this on the podcast. She'd been interviewed about it a few years ago. I listened to this, and she'd, as a 19-year-old, been heavily encouraged to have an abortion, which then obviously was upsetting because she didn't want one. That wasn't her choice. It was a choice inflicted on her by her boyfriend's family, and then everyone got on board and blah, blah, blah. So it's like she's, sadly, because of her trauma, definitely it's a trauma, because of her trauma, she's taking it out on the wrong cause. She should be an ardent battler for women's freedom to choose.
Yes.
But she's interpreted it as like, if I ban abortions, nobody could have done that to me if abortions weren't allowed, which is she's trying
to protect herself from bad people. She wants the government to protect her from the bad people in her life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really, it's like people aren't very good at thinking of the consequences of the systems or process, or policies that they're imagining. And like, if you're not a particularly good systems thinker, and I think a lot of people aren't, you're going to sort of like make slightly, I don't know, come up with short-sighted solutions. Like the same way, working with a client that doesn't have a design mindset, they'll come to you with the solution and you'll kind of go, that's not really you kind of need to ask people what the problem is and then kind of go from there and try and solve it rather than just doing the first thing they thought of, but which they're often very attached to. I'm sick of using the word privilege, but we aren't aware of the freedoms we do have, but we're very aware of the ones we don't. So I can sort of get fixated on the fact that I have to work for a living, so it's really hard for me to sort of try something and fail at it without just kind of like having to go back to work and sort of like to have a year and then kind of try again. If I was just free, then everything would be. And of course, I would then have some different lack of freedom that I was railing against. So my dad won't give me the money unless I do this stupid thing, or he's decided and he won't, they won't let me use the helicopter for anything. It's just not fair.
Exactly.
So we should remember what freedoms we do have, and it's very hard to kind of like remember which ones you do have. Is my only point there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure I've a fear of repeating myself, but you know, like I've always been. Well, actually, that's not true. So my whole life, I've been a multiple passport holder, which has meant that actually my freedom of movement has always been quite broad. And the first time ever I got to a border when we were doing our motorcycle trip, and we'd landed in Alaska, gone into Canada, now we're re-entering the States. And the guy goes, "Oh, you've only got 28 days left on your visa, whatever that thing's called."
Yeah,
and I was
Vista.
like, what?
Yeah.
Sorry?
You feel it when it's gone. Yeah, so you
28 days? I was like, what? And I really felt like I needed sort of a sugary sweet drink to get over the shock of like somebody telling me that I couldn't stay in America land for as long as I wanted to, or for the 3 months. So there was definitely that, like, you don't know until somebody goes, no, you can't do that.
I can't begin to, like, my angriest work email I've ever sent was someone telling me that I had to come back into work at like 8 o'clock in the evening to fix something. I was like, who do you think you are? Like, that was like, I will leave now. Like, how dare you? Like, and the fact that so many people feel they have no choice, or just literally don't have any choice. I mean, maybe this is a bit conservative of me to think that people always have a choice, but I guess they don't. You know, I think a lot of people don't have any choice but to have some Jobsworth twat impose their dubious moral values on them and like force them to do stuff all the time and just be on that power trip.
Well, they've had this thing recently in the news in the UK where somebody got refused the morning after pill in a Lloyd's pharmacy. Did you see that?
God, no.
On personal grounds. They refused to serve somebody. And it's
Jeez.
Like, no. You know,
on personal grounds. Like,
yeah.
Some of this language that people can start bringing in to just say gross stuff now.
Yeah. It's like, on personal grounds, I don't like, I don't know. It's just, it's not, you're not allowed those kind of personal grounds. You know, freedom is actually quite it paints such a, I don't know, pretty picture, but actually it can be quite sinister if you start thinking about it too much, I think.
Yeah, I will. I just, when I was in San Francisco, I did mention this, like just hearing someone celebrating their freedom to make money. I've got the freedom to make money. Which, after our conversation, just it's like the money is the freedom tokens. Like the money isn't the end. The money is the means to freedom. Like, I wonder what that person was coming from. Like, to not feel free to make money, to not feel free to work, to not feel free to, like, do anything that anyone wants. Like, that's not a freedom. That's
actually a trap.
So far below freedom that's what I hate that you're kind of that's the limit of your imagination of what freedom could mean for your life.
Freedom to because I was talking to somebody this week who was like, oh, so you guys are over in Croatia at the moment, and one of my friends did that sort of thing, and now he travels and just works a bit, and he used to be all about the money, but I think I'm still all about the money. And I was like, yeah, but there's no picture in your head of where that money leads you to. What's it? It's like a very, it just seems like a trap. It feels like a cage, like a, of course, 1,000 times we've said it, we have enough to be having these philosophical conversations.
Yeah.
However, like the pursuit of money for money itself seems to me to be just of no value to you as a human.
Yeah, and it's like, and then you sort of think, I'm going to just get the money and then I'm going to be free to do whatever I want. And then like you see people getting really tripped up by that. People win the lottery, they have all this freedom, and
then they're just fucked.
Yeah, it's just it's a disaster because you've never really thought beyond the fact that money is your biggest freedom inhibitor. But you've never really thought beyond, well, I could get this whole area of the VIP area of the bar and spend 10 grand on champagne in one night. Like, yes, you'd be free to do that. But like, how do you kind of go beyond that without? It's hard, those thought experiments, like that thought experiment of having the money. Like I had the Bitcoin thing. It was like, suddenly I was like, there is a possibility that I can do whatever I want. So what actually is whatever I want? And you kind of start going, Christ, there's only so many Macs you can buy.
The other thing about this thing of pursuit of money, on the subject of you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
People who accumulate money do affect me.
Oh, yeah.
They're the people with the private jets. They're the people spending them. They're the people making working conditions worse for other people. Yeah. If all you're pursuing is cash, actually you're no better than a chain smoker sitting next to me, blowing smoke in my face. You're, just giving me a different kind of cancer. It's not and it's a societal cancer you're creating. So yes, I'm saying that I have yet another reason to dislike people who accumulate cash.
Accumulating wealth and just forcing the rest of us to live our entire lives paying off interest so you can have stuff. So we're paying for nothing for you to have whatever you want. Cool system, guys. Love capitalism.
I think if I got loads of money now, I think I'd just buy loads of land and stop people making anything on it. Just like go, no, you can grow things, but you can't make anything on this unless it's some sort of stop the car parks and the roads and that sort of development. So do some preserving. Because there is some billionaire that's bought a big chunk of the Amazon or something recently. Mm. But again, I'm sick of these fucking billionaires buying big chunks of the Amazon.
Why wouldn't you just pay it as tax?
Just get rid of your private jet, get rid of your 55 cars you've collected in your garage, whatever it is.
I'm talking to you, Ivanka, on this flight of fancy, though, as well. Just give it to... That's the thing, it's like...
Yeah, but after I've paid my taxes, I'm still going to be rich because I'm a billionaire.
Pay more taxes. Pay extra taxes. How are we ever going to get out of this mess unless everyone pays extra taxes? That's what I want to know.
Okay, I've paid my 90% tax. I've still got some money left. I would like to buy. So I might. That's my next dream on this little island that I'm on, is to buy just a little bit of forest and put a tent on it. Just sort of like go up there and sit in a bit of forest. Okay. Not do anything with it. Just sit there going, oh, look, birds, bees, butterflies. Don't know where freedom meets feral.
I would one of the biggest things I would like to do if I had lots of money is sort of start to employ some people that I would like to be helping me, I think.
What would they do?
It's amazing stuff.
Like what? What do you need help with?
Yeah, well, what would you do?
Well, I'd have somebody who just kept telling me what to do, where I needed to be.
I'd get a PA. That'd be good.
In fact, I'd love a PA. I'd be like, oh, Ivanka, you're supposed to pick. You've got 10 minutes to pick the child up. Okay, right, go, switch off your computer. No, you haven't replied to so and so's emails, and it's been 5 days. But Google does that now. Thanks.
Yeah, but who cares? Who cares what Google bot thinks?
Have we gone off track a bit?
No, I think it's fine. I think, like, what would you do if you had all the money in the world is a good way of kind of measuring, what you want from freedom. And it's a good way of seeing what you don't feel like you're free to do now. I think you could probably put a tent up in a bloody wood. No problem, right now. Why do you need to win the lottery?
I don't need to win the lottery.
That's not the win the lottery one.
No, that's not the win the lottery.
That's just one you're going to do anyway.
I think I'd probably do that on some version of that on a bigger scale. Like, how, I don't know, Riverford do farming and it's not purely profit driven. So I'd have some sort of like sustainable business. Everyone gets paid well. We're kind to the planet, something, like that kind of, but on a bigger scale.
Here's a thought experiment. So you just said that if you had all the freedom of loads of money, you would limit other people's freedom to put up car parks and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think freedom always leads to someone else like taking it? I've got more freedom, I'm going to use that to take away other people's freedoms. Do you think that's a dynamic?
Probably. Well, but that's more power though, isn't it?
Yeah. But like, and where do they intersect? Like freedom and power. Like,
but this goes back to the libertarian conversation. It's like we need regulations and laws and restrictions to stop us stop us blowing our passive smoke into other people's faces. And that's everything we do that is harmful to, because this is one of the things that makes me struggle. This morning when we were talking about topics, one of the things I'm struggling with at the moment is the fact that the climate crisis is something that I can't protect my child from it on my own. I can vaccinate her, I can feed her well, I can clothe her, I can choose things, I can teach her stuff, I can do all sorts of things. But if the planet's climate is collapsing, I, on my own, as her parent, can't do anything about that. I need everybody to do it together. So every person who is blatantly and flagrantly flaunting that is, in my mind, it to me is an enemy, not just of me, of the whole of humanity, of my child. People like that don't deserve freedom, because their freedom directly, their concept of freedom to make money, freedom to build a coal mine, directly impacts me, and not just me philosophically, but my actual survival and health. And that is, I'm afraid, not acceptable.
On a biological level, this freedom to find any hook or by crook, find a way to extract energy and exploit that, sell that. That's one of the basic drives of life, is to go and find some clever way of getting some stuff out of the ground or out of your surroundings so that you can sort of grow. And I think in itself, like, we have become so powerful as a species that has become unconstrained by the laws of physics. It's in a weird way, it's become we've come up with such machines that the natural constraints that any other living creature in all of biological history since the dawn of time has never had this sort of ability to tear out resources and exploit them. So that's why we need to have these. That's why we need to impose these artificial limits on ourselves.
Yeah,
but that's a tough sell, right? Because you can see, then everyone can see what they're not allowed to do, and that's the thing they're upset about, and that's the thing they're lobbying about, and that's the thing that they're putting all their energy into trying to remove that barrier. And it's a losing battle. It's a really difficult one, which is why we need to not Brexit, so that we can be part of something bigger, and let's just all be part of some big Star Trek federation and all agree that we're going to just stop people doing this bad stuff.
But we need to. So yes, we have evolved. We have developed to a point where we can make all these clever machines that do all sorts of clever things. But that has also made us incredibly, given us a huge amount of hubris, where we think that whatever problem we create, we can solve it. And with unbound, we're just like, fracking, let's create earthquakes, never mind, we'll build stronger houses, we'll pollute the water, never mind, we'll clean it. We're just kicking problems into the long grass with this sort of confidence that we can fix it when we get there.
We feel unlimited, but actually no, we're by a long way from that. We are way above what we've ever been, but that's still a very long way from being able to solve any problem that comes along ever.
And the reality is, we are as this species that has developed these skills to do all these things, we are basically a cancer on the planet.
Look, but don't forget. Like, the counterpoint to that argument is that all this environmental catastrophe is being used to make people's lives, to bring people out of poverty and make most people's lives better than they might be if they didn't have a lot of these things. So, like, this isn't just, we're not just doing this to destroy the planet. We're kind of doing this for us, and we need to remember that we matter too. Yeah. Like, if you just sort of like take humans out of the equation, then what's the point of anything? Like, if your daughter isn't the person behind that, like, is your daughter, you're not going to say that about your daughter.
No, I'm not. Of course I'm not. But we are, I think we do need to think about ourselves in this more symbiotic relationship. It's like, the whole way you cure cancer. I mean, chemo relies, it's basically a bet. Like, can we kill the cancer before we kill the host, is what chemo is based on, as far as I can establish. And it's like, we don't really want to, we need to change, we need to be more symbiotic with our host and with our co-inhabitants of the planet. Yes. Otherwise we can't, and that means other humans as well. What you said earlier about, all these kind of abortion laws and anti-choice stuff being about not seeing women as people. I think a lot of our problems stem from the fact that, we don't see refugees as people. We forget, we distance ourselves. Oh, they're not like us, we're not them. And all that, not seeing other people as people is the root of such evil.
So I've said, like, if you try and control people, if you try and limit people's freedom, if you try and limit businesses' freedom to do whatever they want, they will attack that. And it's sort of like that story of, like, okay, the sun and the wind have a fight, have a thing about you can get this person's coat off, and the wind blows and blows and they pull it tighter, and the sun just kind of beams down light, and it's like, oh, I'm a bit warm, and takes it off naturally. I think that's an empathy. And I think that applies to someone smoking near you. The reason you get angry is, like, can this person not see that this is something that I would not like, that is hurting me, that, like, is making me feel bad? Like, why can this person not see that? And that is then, that's where the role of art comes in. That's where the role of stories comes in. And where we need to, what has happened is we've as media has become more distributed and people can pick and choose what they want a bit more, and there isn't, like, people can find stories to tell themselves that get them off the hook for being a racist, for being, like, anti this, for being anti flat. You can be a flat earther now and have other people to talk to that won't laugh you out the room. You can believe that, you can find things that you want. So that's the stories and that empathy, that sort of empathy gap that is growing. Like, how I always think, like, the business needs to see, like, the flip side of imposing a restriction is that the business needs to see how doing this is going to hurt them, even if they can't immediately see it. And that's where the role of stories and, like, just kind of clarity and empathy and all those kinds of things come in. I don't know quite what my point is here, but if people could just see beyond their narrow little kind of, like, sweaty fight to survive and see that, if just in the same way, if I eat this chocolate bar, I'm going to feel better for 2 seconds and then I'm going to feel horrible,
So one of the things that I was thinking about earlier that I think is coming into focus is this. So as I had a conversation with my washing machine repairman here in Croatia land, because all Croats are philosophers, like to talk about politics. We were having a little chat while he was fixing my washing machine, and we were talking about, rubbish, picking up rubbish on the beach and things like that. And he said, the thing is, if you look at the animal world, if you take us back to, we're animals, you look at the animal world, the lion has no sympathy for the antelope it just killed. There's no empathy there. It doesn't go, it's just lost its child. And I was like, yeah, okay, on that sort of, on this idea that we are animals, then yes, everyone should be walking around grabbing whatever they can and whatever they need to survive, and you can understand those motivations. But
no, it's a circle of empathy. True. The lion wouldn't just go and murder another lion, because they'd be like, oh, you're one of me. Like, I've got to kind of think like I'm genetically similar, and therefore I'm programmed with these drives that prevent me from just like murdering my children. Like, it's that circle of empathy thing with the lion and the gazelle, and we're seeing refugees as gazelles,
instead of seeing them as other lions. And it's like, but then I would like to think, and perhaps I'm wrong, is that we not only do we have this ability to make all these crazy machines, but we have the ability, we produce art, we write stories, we make music, we do all these things that would indicate that we have the ability, the imagination to be more than a lion.
Yeah, and that's what we hope. The role of art in increasing people's sort of circle of empathy, of kind of understanding the consequences of their actions, that a bit more, like a lot of it, I think, is just kind of seeing someone from someone else's perspective and understanding that. And I don't know of a better way to do that than art. But we also have this problem that people are kind of able to ignore the stuff that doesn't support their existing beliefs now. So it's kind of harder to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah, I suppose weirdly, all the made up stuff on the internet is also an art form.
Yeah, exactly. Like all this stuff
stories.
is like, just a thing you can give your attention to, and it's stories at the end of the day. It's like, here are the stories I can tell myself. It would be interesting to find out what that person who is dumping poisonous waste in like a lake, what story they're telling themselves.
It would, yeah.
Because I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure how someone can justify that to themselves.
No.
Without having switched off a part of themselves, like without actually just being a gangster who is a bit of a psychopath that doesn't believe that anyone else's needs matter around them. And is it literally psychopathic people that are doing most of the damage? I think you actually count it up, and there's a very small number of companies doing 95% of the damage.
Yeah, it is. You remind me, our conversation that we had in that Cambridge Analytica conversation about the psychopath at the top and whether or not they'd been separated from their loving parents too early. I read this article, I think George Monbiot wrote it, which was that anyone wanting to be PM needs to have a psychological evaluation. It's like, needs to go to therapy before they're allowed to be. And I think, going back to the freedom thing.
Yes.
I think it is about being self-aware. Because what you were saying about what would you do if you had all the money in the world? I mean, I feel like I have slowly adjusted my life that I'm not sure I don't know what lack of money is stopping me doing now. Do you know what I mean? I might buy more plants more quickly. I don't know. But, plants you can't build a finished garden. You can't rush these things. It's like, what else might I do? I don't know. I'm quite happy at the moment, this week. Last week I was a bit more grumpy. Perhaps I'd have had a slightly different. And that's the other thing. I think one of the things that self-awareness gives you is that ability to check in with yourself and remind yourself that, do you know what, last week you were really happy and this was a good life. And just because you're annoyed this week because, I don't know, something or something was which was I've had a bit of a week like that this week where I'm like, I can't do the news, it's too depressing. Actually there are lots of positive stories, and so got to cling to those. But my freedom is, I don't know, freedom is a tricky thing to pull off, to understand, to appreciate.
How, and then, It's a hard thing to pull off, but it's also a hard thing to recognise that you have it, like which ones you have. And like something that's been on, it was going to be a YouTube video, but I thought it was a bit too, like, I don't know, personal or something. But I think the freedom that I wish I had, I just want to feel like I can play with my toys. Like I could just play sometimes. And I don't know what it is. I'm always like, if I just had, that's such a low priority. I'm just not allowed to do it. But that's one of those ones that I could just say, okay, well, play with your toys for an hour a day, half an hour a week. Just play. Why won't I let myself do that? I'm not sure. But yeah, sometimes the biggest inhibitor of freedom is you blame it on something else. You blame it on not having enough money. You blame it on, there's lots of other things people can blame their lack of freedom on that are a lot more legitimate. But I think you can find a way through. Like you can decide, well, if this is what's important to me, I'm just going to do it and like deal with it, deal with the consequences, or like actually find out what would happen. Like we don't realize how much freedom we do have, and that's, I think, a problem.
In the same way of like, you know, measuring, keeping your being happy is about recognizing when you are happy. Maybe feeling freedom is about recognizing the things in your life that you are free to do, that you have control over.
Yes. Which freedoms you have.
Which freedoms you have.
All right, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
If you like the podcast, you can go to grandpodcast.com. Good domain. And there's a big subscribe button there if you haven't clicked that already. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
And you can find me at michaelforrestmusic.com, goodtohear.co.uk, blankstate.org, I don't know, like loads of places.
Loads.
YouTube. Find me on YouTube. I got a new supporter this week that I didn't even know. So That's something else. Do you want to support us on Patreon? Be our third supporter, because I think we would say thank you, Sharon, thank you, Annette, as our two patrons at the moment. If you want to be on that list, we will thank you until it becomes impractical. Patreon.com/grandpodcast.
And another thing that you can do for us, if you're feeling generous, is write us some reviews and ratings, share the podcast with your friends, tell people about it, just generally spread the love. And what we really like, if you don't want to do any of the other things, is send us a little bit of feedback. Tell us what's good, what's bad, what we should do more of, what we should do less of, and also that's it really. That's the end.
Well, we do what we can, but just tell us what's good, you know. Like, it's hard for us to... Tell us what you liked, because sometimes I don't know what people like about things. No, you can give us all sorts of, like... you can just tell us, like, if you wish it was something else. We may not be able to make it that other thing, because we are quite tight on time and imagination, apparently. Like, it's hard for us to do anything that actually requires forethought and research. So we're just really like, the forethought is our, decades of life experience that we're just going to pour into this podcast and sprinkle it with a bit of recent insight that we've had from whatever we've read. So with that, thanks for listening.
Thank you for
listening.
listening.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.